Have you guys ever noticed how there's some people that can just pick stuff up really fast? Whether that be like learning a language in just a few months or becoming really good at a video game after just playing. It doesn't really matter. The point is, any skill they try, they can become really good at it. Well, I know how to do that, and I'm going to show you how. There are three main categories that go into each skill, and we're going to go through each one, and instead of actually explaining just, the definition and that's it, I'm going to make it more interesting and easier for you to understand by giving you an actual example, which is going to be coding, because I think it fits well with all three. But don't get me wrong, the point of this is to allow you to apply it to any skill you want. So just because I'm using coding doesn't mean you can't apply it to anything else. The whole point is that you can apply it to any skill you want. And when I give you this example, you can see how I apply it to it and be able to apply it to your own life. Alright, so let's start with the first part, which is experience. And this one is by far the most important out of all three. And experience is basically just doing the thing you want to be good at, okay? So experience, I know that seems really obvious when you say it that way, but most people don't do that. And this is like, if you want to think of it as a meal, right? The experience is like the steak and potatoes, and then the side dishes are like broccoli and corn or whatever, or like the other two. So this one is by far the most important. And to plug this into coding to see how this like matches up as an example, the actual thing would be just actually making things, making projects with coding. And as somebody who's done coding before and was a computer science major in college, I've seen the most important problem, or the biggest problem that people learning coding actually do, or that they always just stick to tutorials and they don't actually make anything. And then after watching tutorials for like 6 months, they don't actually know anything when they, sit down with their hands on the keyboard and try to type something. They can't make anything. It doesn't work. And this works for any skill, like I always say, but I've seen the tutorial thing as a really big problem with programming in specific, and that's kind of why I picked this example to show like the flaws with what can come with experience, and that it's not so obvious when you actually get started. Because yeah, it can kind of seem logical to be like, okay, I should watch a tutorial first and then I'll get into it. But people just cope and do that because watching a tutorial is much easier than actually sitting down and making your own thing. The best way to do it is to actually sit down and whenever you want to learn something, just watch a video on it. And yeah, in the beginning, you're going to need more videos. Try to make something with the little you know. But because you don't know much, it's hard. Just start, and then when you want to learn how to make this, look it up, and then you'll actually remember it because you're trying to do something that you actually need. So after you come back to it later, you're going to be like, oh yeah, I remember this because I used it to make, blah, blah, blah on the website. And instead of just, watching it as like the fourth tutorial, and you're not going to remember that because you didn't actually do it. When you actually do it yourself, you'll remember it. And that's like the important part about experience. The more that you do with it, the faster you learn. And this is what I mean by learning stuff fast. Because sure, you can kind of learn through tutorials, but there are faster ways to learn stuff. And if you do this for a month, right? You watch tutorials for a month, and then you try to make something. I mean, I'm not sure you're going to be able to make anything, to be honest. But even if you can, it'll be so much worse than 1 month of experience of actually doing what I said, where you keep trying to make stuff, and then when you need something, then you come back to it, and you look stuff up, and then you put it in there, and then you go back to making stuff. And then that way, you spend most of your time making something. The progress of this person compared to this person is going to be so much more. And that way, you can learn so much faster than the other person. It makes logical sense. So that's what the experience is about. Okay, so the next part is going to be drilling. And people who played sports will know what I mean by drilling. Drilling is when you take minor parts of the actual skill and you just like do them over and over and over again because you get much more exposure to it that way than when you do the actual experience. So for the example with this part, I want to use an actual sport or a martial art. They both work really well. Just playing would be the experience, or just having sparring for the martial art would be the experience, right? But drilling would be, drilling is like the most famous part of that, which is actually doing, small things over and over again. So for a martial art, that would be like doing like 100 kicks before you actually fight. And that way, when you go to the fight, your legs are trained and you're like used to actually kicking. So yeah, the fight is a little different than the training, but your leg will be used to that motion. Whereas if you just keep fighting, you won't be able to use that kick properly, or you won't have time to learn how to do it because you'll get your ass kicked. So when you go to the sport, let's say volleyball, for example, when you actually do play the game, sure, you get a lot of experience that way, but you learn a lot faster if you can add that side dish on there, which is, maybe doing 100 spikes, right? And then you can actually get better at that. Whereas if you just do that in the experience, like, you won't have as many chances to do that, so you can do it on the side. And then when you come to the game, you have so much more experience doing that, because it would have taken you like 50 hours of playing volleyball to get like 100 spikes, whereas you can just do them on your own, right? And that's why I say it's a good supplement to the actual meat and potatoes, which is the experience. Alright, so the last step is to watch masters do the thing. So I think you can already guess why there are so many benefits to doing this, but when you watch the actual masters do the skill, then you can take so much from them, and you can kind of skip and cheat the process in a way, because they've been working on this for their whole life probably. They've been putting a lot of hours into this. They're way farther along than you are. So when you watch them, you can take stuff that would normally take you a lot of time during your road to being a master, and you can take it from them and see how they do it. If you watch them, you can kind of see what they think and why they do it by just watching how they do it. And it depends on the skill, but the example I like to use for this kind of thing is watching pro sports, right? So like if you watch a basketball player or a football player or a soccer player, you can watch their film and you can go through it and pause it in certain areas and kind of go through their head and think, okay, what decisions is he making here? What is he doing? How is he kicking the ball? Like, you can watch and nitpick every little thing, and you can learn so much from that. Because let's take soccer for example, right? You can watch them and see, okay, how is he passing it? At what angle is he kicking out of his foot? When is he deciding to defend? When is he deciding to attack? What is his decision making when he gets in a situation like this? In the film, you'll watch him. He'll be in a situation with two defenders around him, and you say, okay, what is he thinking? How is he able to get free there? Maybe he fakes to go to the left, so he has room to go to the right. It depends on every situation, but pro sports really shows you a good example about why that's so valuable, because you can kind of see how they do it and why they do it without actually having to talk to them, and you can take that and implement that into your own usage of the skill when you go back and do it, because you can go back and think about that when you're in that situation. And there are a lot of things that you're probably doing in this skill where you're like, I don't really know what to do when I get here. And when you watch it, you'll see people in these exact situations, and you'll be like, okay, he was just in the situation here. Now when I do this, I need to do the same thing, right? And we've finished all three parts, and I'm going to put it together for you so you can kind of see how that looks and how you can do this in like a daily scenario. The example we're going to use to put this all into perspective is going to be soccer, right? The most of your time is going to be spent on actually getting experience, like I said, actually playing the sport. But then a small amount of your time is going to go to doing drills and getting better at stuff like shooting and passing and dribbling. And you're going to spend time doing that. And then also you're going to be watching film, maybe when you get home, whatever. And you're going to be watching good players and watching the pros, seeing how they do stuff. That way, both of these, if you can tell what I'm doing here, the drills and the watching the pros are going to add to your experience and they make the experience more valuable. So like, let's put this into video game terms. Instead of getting plus 50 experience for an hour of playing soccer, you'll get like 75 because you're actually making more progress because of the supplements you're doing. And it's going to make you even better and get better even faster because of the extra work you're doing. You're spending most of your time doing the actual experience, which by itself is the most important thing, instead of, watching tutorials or watching, just watching people play soccer and not really thinking about it too much. Instead of that, you're going to be gaining a lot from the experience. Alright, that's it. Now go try to learn a skill.